Wow, that was reasonably painless. I'm Fred McMurray. It's Thursday. Everything seems to be streaming, which means it's 2 p.m., this must be... All right, welcome everybody. It's a very special show today. It's our fourth anniversary. Everyone got their drink?
We do. Happy birthday to Pillars.
Happy birthday.
Woohoo.
Wow, a lot more technology than we had when we first started this, eh, Ray?
Oh, yeah. A lot more.
Move beyond the dial-up.
We've gone beyond the dial-up and the audio only, and we have a very special guest appearance by our first guest.
Yes.
Who's muted.
That's what we do.
I was probably muted then too.
Welcome, Ms.
Awesome.
Rempel. Welcome back.
Thank you.
4 years later.
4 years. I can't believe it. I think I have a couple more lines since then, but other than that,
We all do, honey. We all do.
There's a reason why I wear the hat, because there's a lot less hair, and what's there's gray.
Well, you can fix that. Look at that.
Yeah.
Clearly, that is a fixable problem.
I do. I wear a hat. Why do you
So,
think we used to have the hat rule?
We did, but we have evolved into not hat-wearing humans.
Yes.
But I want to talk a little bit about the team that we've grown. It started with Fred and Ray, and
Dun, dun,
that's
dun,
it.
dun.
Dun, dun, dun,
And
dun.
we have gone from that to this full-fledged team of professionals and experts and people who are trying to make the franchising space a better place. So Ray, here's what I want to know. I know people know this story probably, but of how it began. But how did you feel when Fred came to you and said, "Hey, we're going to do a podcast. I'm going to call it Pillars of Franchising"?
Basically, I said, "What? You're crazy, Fred."
And then his
We still
answer
say
was,
that.
Well,
His
and
answer
he's
was-
still he's still crazy, but
and he's still got time, doesn't he?
yeah.
He does. But Fred, tell everybody exactly how this began, because it didn't start off as a business.
No, it didn't.
No. No.
Ray and I had dinner in December of 2017. It was 2 weeks after Martha passed away. And he threw me into PTSD flashbacks. And as people know me, I tend to tilt at windmills at times. And I thought, I must do something. And then I thought, let's see if he wants to do a podcast. That will solve everything. And here we are, 4 years later.
Exactly. So here's the thing that's kind of fun. For all your antics, Fred, that is one of the kindest stories I've ever heard. And I think that is why you bring a team of people together, is people who care about each other, who want to make each other feel better in times of crisis, and who really have genuine affection for each other. So
Yeah.
I think that's such an important thing to remind people of, that is where this started, and the way that it has grown has been to continue to bring in people who share that philosophy of life. Yeah.
I
So-
think the thing that brings us together is that we're all real and genuine people.
Yep.
And that's and that includes Nancy too. She's not on this.
Sometimes I am real. Sometimes I am a robot. It depends where I am.
Right.
Don't get me started.
Yeah. So Michelle, what did you think when Fred comes to you and says, "Hey, you're going to be our first guest"?
You know, I thought, okay, sure, why not? We'll see how this goes. Because 4 years ago, obviously there were podcasts around, of course, otherwise Fred wouldn't have thought of, doing a podcast. And we had done some in the past with other people, different subjects, things like that. Mm-hmm. So when he said, "Hey, will you kind of be our guinea pig, our first guest?" I said, sure. But in the back of my mind, I thought, well, I could see this thing lasting for a little bit, and we'll see how it goes. Well, we'll see how it goes, because. Yeah. So I honestly, and Fred will love to talk about this multiple times a month. I did not expect to, see everybody 4 years later doing this program or this show. So it's awesome. Congratulations to everyone. And yes, the team that has been built is amazing. And I'm really proud to see where it's gone from that first show. I'm sure I was not a stellar guest. You have now brought on many stellar guests and stellar hosts. So congratulations. I raise my glass, or my bottle, I should say.
Here.
4 years.
Drink straight out of the bottle. Absolutely. Here's to Pillars and to the originators, Fred and Ray, and to the first guest.
That's right. That's
Michelle. Kristen, what do you see going forward? What do the next 4 years hold for all of us?
Wow. Some of those things I don't even know that I can actually talk about yet, but I can tell you now, from being what we were, we have multiple platforms that we're going to be working from. Not only will we be able to help coach and mentor somebody who's looking to get out of corporate America, whatever job they're in, to buy a franchise, making sure that they have all the information and they make the best choice possible. We've obviously got a huge digital magazine presence, as well as sponsorships and things that we're working with. We have what we're referring to as a mentorship program for people who already own franchises, particularly, but small businesses as well, who just need a little extra help. Usually you see that maybe after year 2, maybe 1.5, depending on the franchisor, where people are like, okay, I think I've gotten all the information I can from the franchisor. Now I want to take my business to the next level. So we've got a platform for that. Obviously, Jerry, we've been so blessed to have him and his book, which has a whole learning platform associated with it. Integrating some of those things will be amazing for us. We're looking at doing some really great things with some big companies in terms of, I'll just call it auto fulfillment and leave it at that. And we've got ways for people to invest their money if they're looking to get into franchising without being in franchising. Mm-hmm. And we've got a process where we can help people who have a small business who want to become a franchise. So we've got our hands in almost everything franchising, and really it's just every single person we've talked to, even today, last week, who's interested in the show and interested in helping out. I mean, they have the same values. They have the same perspective we have. Everybody's like, listen, I've done what I really needed to do, but now I just want to be able to give back and help people. And so it's been so refreshing to meet people like that. And I see some great things happening for Pillars. I'm not sure where the end is. I don't know that we have an end at this point. We just keep continuing on. So. No,
but we got to begin with the end.
The end in mind.
I knew someone was going there.
Clever, Ray.
That's too funny. Always bringing it back. Well, I couldn't be happier. I was here and then I was gone and then I was back again, and it's like coming home to family. So I couldn't be happier to be here. Oh, wow. I couldn't be prouder of the people that I work with. And when we had our meeting in Chicago and we got to meet everybody in person for the first time, some of us, it's a relief to meet people in person and think these are the people who I thought they were. Not a single disappointment in the group.
I think that's what I said when I hugged you, right? I was like, oh my God, it's really
there you are.
You're just what I thought you were.
Yeah, and I think it's so important because we've all been in situations where we weren't with the people who were our people. So having your people in the things that you do every single day is exciting. And I think, to point out, one of the things that makes us different is that we have the $1 Million Mentor Program. And the reason that makes it different is because when we have people who counsel you through or mentor you through a buying process or growing your business, they are people who have been in the shoes of the people that we're helping, of our clients. And so I think that's a huge differentiator for us. And I think it can't be understated how important it is to have people who recognize the investment and the risk that people feel in the beginning stages of owning businesses, especially in franchising. So I you know, that to me is a really exciting thing to be able to tell people. We know and we care, and we're not going to steer you in a direction that we think is going to set you up for failure. We're going to set you up for success every step of the way. So,
and we're all from different backgrounds, right? Which I think is really cool. So, you know, last week I talked with somebody who wants to take their restaurant into a franchise concept. Well, good. We have somebody who's done that, who's worked in restaurants, QSRs before, or sit down restaurants. And then if you got somebody who wants services business, well, you know, whatever it is that you're looking for, we either have the exact fit or a very good fit for somebody who's been in the business. And we're always growing, right? So we just added Karen Kimsey Sword from Dale Carnegie. Every addition we make to our team is a complement to what we already have. And so I think that's the really great thing. And we're always looking to add more people, right? So I think that's really been a phenomenal way that we've grown the team to make it more valuable.
Absolutely. And if we don't have it, we can get it.
This is such good information. I apologize for butting in here for a moment. Many of you do know and some don't. As a former franchisor, which we were about 15, 20 years ago, there was nothing like this. There weren't franchise consultants. There weren't people. There were just a few people around who could help, but they weren't what is here today. And we didn't make it. You know, I always say how I failed at franchising in a successful way,
Right.
which we did because we bounced back and now serving the franchise industry, but that's another story.
Right.
If there had been the heads, the intelligence, the mentoring that 20 years ago or 15 years ago, I think it is, that you have today, you'd have a lot more going into it. You would have had a lot more going into it. As it worked out for us, we're fine, we're happy, small family-owned business. I had dreams of becoming, I don't know if everybody knows what telephone doctor is, but I had dreams of becoming the second Sylvan Learning, you know, brick and mortar, every street, every city. But we're fairly big and popular and international. We're happy, so that's it. But thank you for doing all you're doing in this industry. It still means a lot to me, the franchising.
Thank you.
And
we're going to talk all of how you're helping franchising too, because you are our special guest today.
Oh, I really?
You are.
All these famous, popular people. I'm thrilled to be here. It's fun to be on these podcasts because you're the real deal, and that's what I am. You know, if you screw up, you screw up.
Yeah.
Well, and with that, Ray, would you like to introduce our lovely guest today?
Sure. Nancy Friedman has been on the show before, and it's great to have her back. I feel that Nancy is one of the people that are really genuine and real people, and so to speak, because she says it like it is, whatever it is. Yep. So I think one of the things that I know you have your business is helping people, especially on the telephone. Is that correct?
We help companies communicate better with their customers and coworkers, and all now 7 touch points of communication: email, voicemail, snail mail, phone, fax, face-to-face, and yes, now even chat. But you're on the right track.
Excellent.
Yeah, there you go. Well, you could do it a lot better, and I continue doing because you're doing it a lot better than I am.
Really, you're on the right track. Our motto is, helping companies communicate better with their customers and coworkers. How many of us forget about our coworkers?
Yes.
People talk about it, but they don't do anything about it.
Yeah.
So we're a small family-owned business, mother, father, daughter, son. I've stepped back to be chairman, and my son is now president, doing very well with our online learning, serviceskills.com. And I don't want to say renegated to the back. doing Zoom programs because our Zoom programs are going very, very well. They're fun, they're fast, they're inexpensive. I've been grounded from travel, so that's another story, but we don't have to get into that. It's just been fun. And I would say 80% of my work is in the franchise industry. And then, of course, there's normal people, as I call them, normal people in the plain old corporate world.
Well, we just won't even think anything about what you just said there, Nancy.
Okay.
We are extra normal.
There you go. Sometimes extra.
I'm not taking any votes on that, Kristen.
Well, so Nancy, you touched on a couple things here that I want to point out because, when people think of the telephone doctor, right, just that name, you're like, okay, well, who actually talks on the telephone today? But you talked about these different touch points. And do you find, especially today after COVID, as more and more people are working remotely, that whether it be Zoom conferences, chats, text messages, did you find there to be a huge gap in how people communicate verbally, face-to-face, versus how they chat and how they text in terms of style?
We've all learned a little bit about how people Zoom. And some people just do this, some people do this, some people streak their hair. I mean, we forget that we're on camera. And so our article, be camera ready for a Zoom meeting, and I'll send it to you if you want to post it. It's just, we all have bugaboos, and I did a annual meeting for Glass Guru, which I'm proud to say.
Yes.
And I got the recording, and I didn't realize how often I did this, which was bugging me to death as I watched it. Now,
Right.
it probably wasn't as often as that, but we all have little oddities that we don't realize we have. And if you watch it, it's like listening on the phone, listening to the calls back. People say, oh my gosh, did I say that? Yeah, you did. So you should watch one or two of the Zoom programs that you do to find out what's going on. But in answer to your question, which I have forgotten already, I will say that too many people are using COVID as an excuse.
Yes.
The businesses. I mean, I walked in the other day to some place and I said, it's not ready. She says, well, it's COVID. I said, you're kidding me. It's COVID?
Yeah.
Wow. And I stood with the lady next to me. I said, did you know it was COVID? I mean, who the hell cares? You shouldn't have to stand behind something. You just say, I apologize, it's not ready yet.
Right.
We all know you're understaffed. We all know you can't get help. I mean, you do need to have a little love and kindness and be patient now.
Sure.
My husband is a very, very patient man. He's never used any. So you've got to learn to be patient. Patience is a virtue, and during these times with I don't know of any company that hasn't been affected somehow, some way, maybe minor and some so terribly major.
Yeah.
Somebody talked about the restaurant industry. They got pummeled.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah.
So how do you coach a restaurant? Let's take, so now a restaurant's a great example for me because you tend to have teenagers or young people working, and then you have like a lot of times the parents like me who are frazzled and running to and fro. I ordered, I just want to grab my stuff like you were in line to grab your things and go. How do you deal with the communication across generations in a kind of environment like we have today, where I'm ready to go and the teenager's doing this with her hair and snapping her gum, and she's just kind of, waiting for somebody to get the products ready to go. How do you bridge
to each other and forgetting you?
Exactly. How do you bridge that gap when you're talking to people?
Well, the old saying, and you who are in business, and Jerry and all of you, it starts at the top. So if management isn't interested in training, it's not going to get done. It's got to start at the top. When I go into a company, and it happens mostly in the medical, which I don't like to do anymore, but when I go into companies, let me tell you a true story, it's quick. I used to work with the former CEO of Tribune Broadcasting, WGN Television in Chicago. Kristen, you know that.
I do.
And we're very, very close. And I moved down here, and he called me up one day and he said, I need you to come up. My people they just suck. And you really need you to help me. And I said, okay. So I get up there, date specified. I get up, I forget what day it was. And we get 80 to 100 people in a room. And my friend, who shall remain nameless, but I could share it with you later.
Is it friend in
CEO
quotes now?
The CEO of Tribune Broadcasting says, okay, I'll pick you up for lunch. This was 9 o'clock. I said, where are you going? He's like, at a golf game. And I just looked at him and said, sit down.
Good
He's
for
like, at a
you.
golf game. I said, cancel it. I can't cancel it. Now, I knew him fairly well, so I could be that strong, but I think I would have said it to any CEO. I said, if you're not here, I'm not here. I'm not going to talk to your staff in your behalf. You've got to be here, head nodding, participating. Yes, I like it. No, I don't. And we had that 10-second stare down that you have with somebody. He said, okay. And he stayed. And he came and he, obviously thanked me. He says, I don't know where my head was. Of course I have to be here. But you have no idea, and I don't do it as strongly, but when I get a program, I say, please, you've got to have the management part here.
Sure.
And it's not that it won't work, it just works better when you've got top management there. As far as the teenagers, these kids are starved for good. They're just starved for good information. I found that on site, they would come up to me afterwards and say, I never saw, they don't get what we give in high school, grammar school. Our communication, customer service is not a curriculum in any school that I know of. They may say, be nice and smile and, do that, but that's not training, obviously.
Sure.
So once I've trained them and they see how easy we make it, I really get good marks from it. And, those that don't have not been trained. I know. Go ahead.
So my customers are saying, you know what, and I'm kind of guilty in the same way, right? Please don't call me because I think you're going to be calling me to sell me an extended warranty. So don't call my phone, just text me. And don't email me because I get 1,000 a day and who knows when the heck I'm going to see your email. If you could just send me a quick text with exactly what you need, you are like 99% there, right? But how do we make our text messages smile, right? Because we're always talking about when you pick up the phone, look in the mirror so you're smiling, right? Because if you're smiling when you say, hi, good morning, right? People see and hear that. But how do you make your text messages smile?
That's a funny thing. I always start with a smile and say, hi, it's me, Nancy, in case you didn't guess. I mean, there's each of us have our own personality. I don't want you to be me. I don't want to be Ray. Michelle doesn't want to be Laura. So we all have our own personality. And what's really, be true to yourself. And Ray, thank you for that compliment. If you're real and you can find just one area that you can find a little humor in, that's the way to do it. Humor will win out. So you never send a mad text like you shouldn't send a mad email.
Sure.
So be careful of that. Just say, I don't mind waiting 100 days, but 110 is a little long. Can you give me an idea? If you can put a smile on the person who's receiving the text, you're a winner. There are no special words. Otherwise, I would sell them. Okay.
Well, I have to guess some of these acronyms. Like my kids sent to me one time, and they are all teenagers. So understand if you know what this stands for, they're teenagers, right? So it's ROTFLMAO.
I'll be right back because I have this texting dictionary.
Yes. See, I'm like, what are they talking about?
So let me look and see what that is.
ROTFLMAO. What is that? And then
let me look it up. Wait a minute.
ROTFLMAO.
Oh, something left.
Rolling on the floor, laughing my off.
Yeah.
So
that's where it is. That's where it is.
Right.
You need to get this. This is so handy. You get a text and somebody says something. This guy is RR. You know what that means?
No.
Really rich.
Okay. All right. Well, that makes sense.
I mean, it's all here.
Well, so how do you get your staff, right? Because these are real things for people to understand. And more, I'm telling you, my customers tell me, don't email me, don't call me, just send me a text. Now, luckily, we have some automation that allows that to happen properly, and I get to write what the text should be.
Yeah, good for you.
But there are situations in which that doesn't happen. And so I'm just curious, how we combat that and how we make sure that people know what's really etiquette when you're texting customers and what's not.
you're really lucky that someone, a customer especially, has said how they want to be contacted. Because
Yes.
that's one of our first good customer service techniques is, Mr. Pillar, do you prefer email, the phone, text, Pony Express? How do you want to be contacted?
Snail
Yeah.
mail.
So he might say, well, I love texting. Okay, mark that down. He loves texting.
Right,
Somebody
right.
else will say, oh my God, I can't stand texting. Please email me. And then then we do get so many emails, and some of them are so useless.
I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
If Nancy, I think, even towards the beginning of the show, we always talked about how important it is and how we communicate with our employees. And I think it's recently, because of COVID, it's become even more important how we communicate with them. Can you give us a few tips on some good ways of making sure we get through to our employees?
Well, like anything else, confirmation of a statement is always important. When you're face to face or when on a Zoom, I can say, Michelle, and blah, 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 blah. Does that make sense to you, Michelle? And she gets to say yes or I don't understand. So that's face to face. And we're so lucky when we can either stand in front of somebody or have lunch with somebody or go Zoom somebody. But on the phone or where there's no way to get a facial expression, you got to just barely ask somebody. Now, I've just asked you not to take too many breaks. Am I being real? Is that something you can deal with? Do you understand that? Well, yes. How many breaks do you think there's got to be, I don't want to say effort, but there's got to be a little job on your part to get confirmation from the person. Putting it in writing's a little strong, unless it's, spitting on the floor. I'm going to need that in writing. We're not going to spit on the floor anymore. But from what I'm hearing, you're just asking normal communication things, and you're looking for an answer, and is not an answer.
Yeah, that's right.
By the way, there's not a thing that we share, an idea, tip, skill, technique, whatever it is, that cannot be used within your own family. And that's a great way to practice, boys and girls, is try it on your own kids, your husband. Dick and I, we go back and forth we've got a wonderful phrase, I'm a big double checker, and I make a big deal about that in training. Just when somebody asks you something, say, let me double check that. And because that's a confirmation that I'm good, and I'm going to double check for you. It's a wonderful thing to say to anybody. So every morning, Dick's up and can't hear me. Every morning, without fail, Dick says to me, where are my glasses? Did you see my glasses? So I say with a big smile, did you double check the bathroom sink where they are every morning? Let me double check. Yes, you're right, Nancy, they're there. So instead of saying, doofus, you left him there all the time. So I just asked him if he's double checked. And there's just so many, we use the KISS method, and I know you all know what that is. Keep it simple, Simon.
Right.
And if you do, you know yourself that some people complicate things that don't need to be complicated,
Yes.
including
I resemble
sometimes.
that.
Yes.
So I wish I had a magic bullet. Like I said, I'd sell it.
Yep. Well, Nancy, thank you so much. We always appreciate you coming on and talking to us. And the article that you mentioned, Lucky, that's in our digital magazine this month that came out on the 1st of February.
Well, good for you. You guys are so much fun to be with, Elizabeth, and with Ray always is. Where's Fred go? He left already.
Yeah, he's in virtual world.
He's hiding.
Just,
we don't let him out of the pen often.
I understand why. Okay. But
Well,
I am easy to find online. Link in with me if you haven't. And thank you very much for allowing me to be on your God bless you celebration. 4 years.
Thank
more.
Thank you, Nancy. Nancy Friedman, Friedman, right?
Correct.
Did I get it? Excellent. Nancy Friedman, you can find her on LinkedIn, the telephone doctor. Thank you very much, Nancy. We look forward to talking to you again soon.
A pleasure. Jerry, nice seeing you. Do I sign off or stay for the rest?
You can do whatever you want.
Hey, franchise owners. How's your local marketing? Do you feel like you could use some help keeping up with your social media posts and comments and reviews? Do you wonder if you could be doing more to attract local customers? Are you able to identify new move-ins to your local area? At Westvine, we help franchisees like you reach more local customers through digital marketing. With daily monitoring, creative content, and ad placement, and customer data intelligence, we'll get your business in front of the people who want your products or services. We also work with franchisors who need an agency to handle the digital marketing for all of their locations. If you're ready to reach more local customers, give us a call at 805-265-5440 or visit us at westvine.com. That's 805-265-5440 or westvine.com.
Well, hello.
Kristen, how are you today?
Jerry, it's Friday Eve.
Friday Eve, let's have well, we already had a celebration. Let's have another one. Look, let's all pitch in.
Yeah, I love Friday Eves. You know that. And I love doing our Pillars of Franchising show. And I love it when all of a sudden things pop up and I'm like, well, look at here. Now today I get to talk to you about narrowing the selection in franchising.
And what a great topic it is, right? And as we try and help people to find the right franchise and stuff like that, this will be one of the best chapters, one of the best investments they could have. And the chapter is so big and there's so much information in it. All I can do is just touch on it today. But I do want to revisit something real quickly. Yeah. How about that Nancy Friedman lady? Holy cow.
She
what
has
amazing
more energy.
Stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. And she said some things when you were talking a little bit about, expressing a smile when you're talking on the phone and things like that. It makes me go back to my childhood when I was running a telemarketing company, one of the first ones in the area. And I remember putting mirrors up on the wall of the cubicles people worked in. So they would smile at themselves and it would come across to clients and so on. So there's a lot of little tricks and Nancy is the queen of all of that stuff. So that was great information.
Yes, absolutely. It took me back to my call center days. That's why I brought it up. You have to smile when you answer the phone.
Yeah. So in this chapter, now last week we talked a little bit about my history in trying to find a franchise. And in fact, there were no systems, no processes, nothing. And how I spent so much time in my car and my highlighter looking at industry magazines and highlighting and sticky noting things and stuff like that. And it was just it was a convoluted mess, but it was still some sort of a process that I could handle. Well, over the years of mentoring franchisees and potential franchisees, I've come up with a system that we call our SORT system, S-O-R-T. And S stands for search, O stands for organize, R stands for rank, and then T stands for test. And this is such a big difference from back in the day when I was going through my process. Big differences. And one of the things people need to understand at heart, there is such a large difference between telling a friend that you work somewhere and telling somebody that you own a business.
Oh, yes.
Huge difference, right?
Yeah.
So the pride and the ego and things like that go with owning your own business need to start when you're choosing which business you're going to go into. You've got to be able to find something that you do have that pride in, that you want to be engaged in, and those kinds of things. So following some sort of a process, whether it's my SORT process or something else, can be critical. It can be life-changing. It can be business saving or salvaging. There's so many things that go with it. So I do want to focus on a few things in my few minutes here, and then suggest people dig further into it. Maybe whether you buy the book or just borrow it or whatever, get more information, because this chapter would by itself would be worth whatever the cost of the book is. The rest of it's kind of free. So one of the things that I know, and I think most of the listeners know, is that people like us, and when I say us, I mean entrepreneurs, we're different than the rest of the world.
Yes, we are.
Sometimes different is good and some of it's bad, right? But the good part, one of the things, and anybody that knows me and has observed me working in my climate will tell you, I've usually got my phone, my computer, and my iPad and a notepad all scattered right here, and I'm running them all at the same time.
Yep.
Because entrepreneurs, we go fast and we break
Yes.
things. And
Yes.
when we break things, we learn from it so we don't break it again. So having the tools close by, of which the sort method is one of the tools that we use. But, you know, when entrepreneurs are involved, especially when they're, and I'll call them baby entrepreneurs, the ones that are considering a franchise and trying to figure out where they want to go with that path and all of those kinds of things, there are a lot of things to consider and virtually none of them think about it.
Yes.
On their list is choosing a franchise. That's it.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so many things that go along with that and what you're going to be responsible for and so on. So many people at that point in time don't stop to think about the fact they're going to be signing contracts
Oh yeah.
worth, in some cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And all they're worried about is choosing a franchise. They don't think about the next step that
That's
goes
right.
with that. So factoring that into your method or your process is a big thing. What kind of contracts are you going to sign? How much money will that equate to? You got to think about leases, because
Yep.
if you're a retail type establishment, you may be signing multiple leases for 10-year periods that you're committed to. Even if you close your business, you're
Sure.
still committed to those.
Well, and that's a good point, because a lot of people, if you think about just the 15 years that I've been in business, right? We've gone through a recession, you start to recover, things are going great, then all of a sudden, COVID hits. So there's some kind of a cyclical, I'll call it a mini disaster that seems to happen every 10 to 12 years. And if you're not informed about those kinds of things, they can be devastating. What if you go to business in 5 years and you're in a 10-year contract for equipment in a building?
And we hear that story in mentoring every day. We hear
That's
about
right.
people that get to the point they have to close their business and they've signed a personal guarantee. That's another term that people need to understand, a personal guarantee for that lease. So it has nothing to do with the business. When the business closes, if there's still lease term, you're going to continue to make those payments or come to some sort of a financial agreement with the landlord to get you out of whatever's left of the lease. So there's some big things. And the other thing people don't realize is the dollar volume they're going to be talking about as opposed to what they're used to in their personal life. You know, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars are things we seldom talk about in our personal life, but they become very common when you start getting into franchising. So when you start to think about that and making the decisions, the sort method is, again, a process. It makes decisions easier, because back in the day when I was sitting in my Nissan Sentra highlighting, you know, magazines and all that kind of stuff, some of the line items that I might have highlighted in different color codes were the cost to get into the franchise, how engaged you have to be, you know, how many licenses might be there, how many units does the franchisor currently have open, because that'll show, that'll show that they're successful or not, right?
Yep.
So in this system, and I'll dare people to do this right now, open in your browser, you know, and just query franchise opportunities and see how big the number is that comes back to you.
Yeah.
I mean, I did that a while back when we were researching the book. I put that in and it was 62 million.
Wow.
Because the term franchise opportunities doesn't just mean there's a franchise available. It's everything to do with all of that.
Mm-hmm. And
now,
all
when you
the
look
people
at
that are
that,
involved, right? All the people that are involved are under franchise opportunity.
Yeah. So when you look at that, think about how difficult it is to sort through all of that. So our system is built all around basically building a spreadsheet based on the sort method. So if you were to do that, what you want to do is then start narrowing down, you know, the search profile, if you will. And part of that is by using keywords, of course. So franchise opportunities. But then you talk about a search string, which to many people might be common sense, but a whole lot of others it won't be. So in a search string, perhaps you would put franchise opportunities in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Okay, so we've got a string. So that again limits it again. And then other terms that you could put in there is something about the cost. So franchise opportunities in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, between $100,000 and $1 million, or whatever parameters you want to put in there. And then what you're going to do is start organizing that information. So what I suggest people do is create a spreadsheet. And the first three categories I want them to put in is the franchise name, the web address, and an area for notes. Because then as you go across that thing, you've got all the information you need plus everything you thought about when you were researching that thing. And maybe you put some priorities in there or something like that. Now, as you go through there, that allows you a lot of opportunities to make some decisions on the fly that you may eliminate some things before you go any further, right? And then I want you to try and minimize it to, I'll call it the dirty dozen, you know, that dozen or 10 that really leap out at you right away, and put them on the axis, right, on the other side of that. And then as you're going up, as you're going across further, I want you to put in some things that help you compare and contrast. So some of the criteria might be cost. Mm-hmm. And then when you go down that column, I want you to put in a grade from 0 to 10 on where that ranks on your scale. Nobody else's, your scale. So if you think you're willing to invest $100,000 and it's $200,000, maybe it gets a 1. Mm-hmm. If it's $80,000 to $100,000, maybe that's a 10. And what you're going to do is continue along doing that process. So you're going to look at the phase of growth. In other words, how many units do they have? And you're going to put all kinds of things down there that relate to that. So a phase of growth. If they've got 10 units out, maybe that's a 1. If they've got 110, maybe that's a 9 or something. And you see where I'm going with this is you put in more columns. So location, is it home-based? Do you have a retail place that you got to have? Will you be signing a lease? Number of territories, number of units, as I said. Is it an existing unit, or is it a brand new one that you're going to be building? And what's your comfort level with that? There's a long list of different things for each person that might be pertinent that they can put across that axis, and then put a number in. And then you know where I'm going. At the bottom, you're going to just tabulate that. You're going to put a total in for each of those. Mm-hmm. And what that's going to do is give you an opportunity to, kind of without thinking about it, rank them and come up with maybe the top 2 or 3 or 4 according to that grading system. Yep. This is simple, very easy to manage, very easy to use, and you can go back and pistol whip it any way you want to, or pencil whip it or whatever, to make it say what you want it to, but at least it gives you a process that you can go through, right? More columns, more criteria leads to better decisions. And then what you do once you have that done, you've ranked it, and then you're going to go back and you're going to look at those top 3 or 4, and you're going to go through a longer process where you do a little more research on those, gather a little more information, and maybe have conversations with your advisors. We always talk about your top 3 advisors, right? Your accountant, CPA/person, your attorney, and your banker. So you may go have discussions with those people about your ranking system, why you put the numbers you did in, the ones that came out at the top, and how you consider those. They may have a different take on some of that. But the bottom line is you followed a process that led you to a solution of 3 or 4. You get other people involved in it. That helps you do the testing after you've ranked them. And it will become much easier to take 62 million hits and boil it down to 3 or 4.
I wanted to point out, Jerry, you said something about, when you talk to your lawyer and to your accountant. I mean, I want to revisit, we've talked about this a lot of times before. Make sure if you're looking into franchising that you're talking with somebody who's familiar with franchises. So franchise lawyers are very different than a regular business lawyer, right? They're familiar with the relationships. They're familiar with things that can be changed in the FDD. As well, when you talk to your accountant, a lot of these things, you have to look at where you are financially, which tax bracket you're in, and what would benefit you most. Are you an S Corp, a C Corp? That could have to do with how you're financing your business. So there's a lot of different things that come into play. Don't think you can just call up the guy at H&R Block or go to your family attorney for this kind of help, because there's specialty folks out there that you need when you're going into franchising.
Well, you bring up an excellent point, because there's so many potential franchisees that I talk to and mentor and help with the process. Mm-hmm. And most of them are just going to go to the same attorney that, did their will or something like that, who has no franchise experience. And I have to help educate the attorney on things that you can and can't do, which is sad because I'm a long ways from an attorney, but I've done this long enough. I understand the process. You would be surprised how many attorneys would advise a prospective franchisee on how they can go back to the franchisor and change the FDD, because they don't understand FDDs. That's government regulated. They spend a lot of money putting it together every year to meet the mandates. and they're not changing it. They don't.
That's right.
They don't need you as a franchisee bad enough to go through that process. So you will have to amend your approach to what the FDD says, or you have to choose a different brand. But great points, Kristen.
Yeah, thank you, Jerry. I have to tell you one great thing for those of you going, oh my gosh, it's so much work, it's so much work. It is a lot of work. Now, you can call us, go on the website with Your Dream Starts Here, and Jerry can help with the process. I can help with the process with some tools that we have access to that maybe some of you don't. But this is, this is all the information, this is all the data that goes into shopping for a franchise. So, but I want to say, Jerry, in your book, and for those listening, the great thing about your book is it does really read like a story. And so when you talk about that Nissan, I had a vision in my mind of here you are in the passenger seat, filled up to the windows with files and markers all over. And I mean, really, the book is a great read. So if you have an opportunity to get your hands on it, please do. Make sure you have highlighters and page flags because you're going to need them.
Well, first off, that's exactly what the Nissan looked like. And I had to move a pile of stuff every time I took my wife somewhere. So yes. And yes, there were highlighters and page flags and all that everywhere. And you will use that. If you were to buy this book and use it, it truly is a guide from when you start thinking about a franchise to grand opening and all the way beyond that. So I'm not tooting my own horn or trying to sell them, but honest to gosh, if you're thinking about a franchise, it is worth many, many, many times what you'll spend for it.
Absolutely.
And if you're like me, Kristen, you see Fred hovering, and you know why he's hovering, right?
I know. Mm-hmm. Be ready. He might try to stump you today. Who's to say? We never know.
So, Fred, is there any other questions that you have for me besides the one I know you're ready to ask?
Yes, I do actually. So today's question of Stump Jerry is: some of us know that you started out life as an Iowa farm boy. A few other people know that for a while you had a cattle feedlot, and then were killed by mad cow disease. And I understand a bit about mad
reincarnated,
something like that. So my question is what did you learn while owning a feedlot that helped you become the super franchisee that you are? And, you have 1 billion different grade clips, so that makes you a super franchisee in my part.
Well, Fred, the great question, because I think everything we do in life is a learning process that you can, if you keep that information, it's valuable in the future. My banker and I had this conversation many times. First off, that was the first time, other than land purchases, that I dealt with writing $100,000 checks when 2 pot loads of cattle, baby cattle, pull up and they unload, right? So the banker and I had some long conversations about that, because point 2 is some of them are going to die, and I mean die prematurely, which means you're out that money. That's got to factor into your cost. So when you think about that from a business standpoint, whether it's a franchise or raising cattle, you got to understand not all of these things are going to work out. Your plans as far as a pro forma and a business plan, they're not going to always hit where you want them to be. Your break-even point might be pushed out a little further because of COVID, because of supply chain issues, because of demand for real estate, because of all kinds of things. All of those things I learned very clearly when I was, my part-time job was farming and raising cattle. Another thing, insurance. So those cattle deaths can be covered by insurance. So making sure you're properly insured. Insurance doesn't just necessarily come with signing a contract and paying money to an insurance company in case something burns down or whatever. Some of the insurance is making sure you've got the right processes in place so that your path through your business cycle stays fairly consistent instead of having peaks and valleys. Again, almost all of that came through my learning path through corporate America and raising cattle. Really interesting question, Fred. Thank you.
That is actually, and you did a great job tying those two together. I was saying to Elizabeth, oh my gosh, the tagline is feedlot to franchising.
Your next book. The next book title. We're getting it started
for you, Jerry.
Next book's already written, Fred. Can't change it now.
Yeah, all right. If you haven't figured out franchising, go buy a feedlot, and then.
No, don't do that. I don't recommend anybody does that. So, Fred, question
yes,
of the day. You want to know If
I'm
now's
assuming,
a good time, right?
Yeah, bring it. Is it a good time to buy a franchise?
You know, it is a great time to buy a franchise, and I don't want to sound like I'm beating the same drum. And I have new information today that proves that this is a great time. And this comes from IFA, the International Franchise Association. I'm just referring to my notes so I get the numbers right, guys. But on February 2nd, they released their 2022 Franchising Outlook Report. And this is a survey of existing franchisees all across many systems. In 22, it's the third year of dealing with the COVID pandemic. So they were unsure what kind of feedback they would get. So let me share some numbers with you. 70% of franchisees and 84% of franchisors rate their opportunity for growth in 2022 as strong or very strong. Think about that. Roughly 80%, 70 to 80% say that 2022 growth is going to be strong or very strong. The same survey shows that revenues are now equal to or higher than pre-pandemic levels. Again, a huge crossroads. 88% of franchisees say they enjoy operating their business. In an era of COVID and short staffing, 88% still say they enjoy operating their business. And I think this is even more telling. This next one really grabbed my attention. 86% of existing franchisees say they enjoy being a part of their franchise system. How powerful is it when the people who are paying the bills say, I am really glad I joined this and I'm a part of it. So there you go, Fred. That's real numbers, not just Jerry saying it's a good time.
Well,
and
I'm glad.
Jerry,
I'm glad you're going into our 5th year with us.
Absolutely.
It'll be great. Thanks.
I have to think that that's probably a lot of the Zors stopping during this pandemic and reevaluating where they are, what they can do to help. And obviously it reflects the number of franchisors that made sure to check on their franchisees and offer assistance through the pandemic. So I think that's great. That's great. Awesome. Jerry, thank you again. As always, we'll look forward to seeing you again next week with more great information and more updates.
And another strange question from Fred.
Of course.
All right, as always, thank you to Jerry Akers. We want to welcome 2 new sponsors to the show. Franchise 247 is the first one. The Franchise Show 247 virtual platform provides access to best of breed franchise information all in one place. With seminars and guides on franchising, Franchise Show 247 offers a continual exhibit to find all things franchising. To find them, visit franchiseshow247.com. Our second sponsor is the Titus Center for Franchising. It is the only dedicated university center in the country focused on enabling students to master the principles of business franchising. For students interested in business and business franchising, the Titus Center provides unparalleled opportunities to hone their knowledge and learn from the most respected leaders in the field. To find out more information about them, visit pba.edu, and you can Google Titus Center for Franchising. It comes right up. We'd also like to encourage anyone who has questions to call in, 323-580-5755. We can get Jerry back on if we need. And we have Laura Liss, franchise attorney, coming up next. So feel free to message us or give us a call to ask her questions as well.
Hey, welcome, Laura. You're on mute, just so you know. Oh, there you go. Good. See, you're faster than me.
Don't worry, Kristen. I was just waiting for you to do the intro.
Yeah, well, welcome to the show. We're so excited to have you. We know that you are a franchise attorney and you help franchisees and some franchisors as well, right? So kind of both sides of the coin.
Yeah, we find that we have really great experiences in the industry because we are every day talking to both sides, right? We don't have just one perspective. We know what's affecting our franchisee clients on the ground, and we also know the kind of protections and growth that our franchisors are looking for.
That's awesome. So today, let's focus a little bit on a franchisee, somebody looking to buy a franchise. What are some of the critical pieces that you would advise people to look for when getting ready? Obviously, Jerry talked about kind of his sort system, but what are some red flags and things that you would recommend to people if they're trying to go out and do this on their own?
Yeah. Well, I think that a lot of what Jerry shared is really critical advice for when they actually are reviewing a franchise concept. But I think that even more fundamentally, and maybe he's touched on this in prior weeks of the show, is to really think about things that you could or couldn't see yourself doing as a potential franchisee. We've all heard about the labor shortages, right? And depending on what kind of business it is, you might have to be called in one day to help run your store.
Yeah.
If you can never see yourself, flipping burgers
Yeah.
or, running a deep fryer, probably food is not the right path for you, right?
Right.
But at the same time, I have a client who we just bought an existing location of a franchise, and she already owns one. This will be her second. And, the seller was having to be in the store all the time because he found out that his front desk person had actually been stealing.
Oh.
Okay. So, just like any business, you have to be able to be in the store if, in fact, you lose a manager or you lose a, person who's really supposed to be there if you aren't planning to be there, which is another fundamental question. Like Jerry referenced, what kind of time commitment are you planning to put into the business? Is it something where you are looking to do full-time best effort, or are you looking to, be semi-retired and have this as an income stream, but maybe you go around and you check on your store, twice a week, and otherwise you have free time.
That's actually such a good point. Today we were talking with somebody who wants some assistance in helping buy a franchise. And so we were talking about, what kind of lifestyle are you looking for and what is your current situation? And this gal has 2 young kids and looking at a retail concept. And I said, if that's what you want, but I want you to think about pretty soon you're going to have room parties, you're going to have all these different things coming up with your kids. And if you're okay not being there, that's fine. But I just want you to understand what kind of sacrifices you may be having to make.
Right. And a lot of that is also evaluating what is the potential profitability of the business. For example, in some concepts, if you only have one location, right, you may need to really be there. You really can't afford to have, a manager, maybe, a couple of days a week so you have a little time off, but not full time. And so what you're explaining is a very plausible reality if the numbers are just not there, right? And so, if you say to yourself, okay, it is important for me to be home with my kids and be there, basically 2 p.m. onwards, so you can be ready for when they get home from school, then you need to be evaluating that in your analysis of picking a concept.
Yeah. And sometimes we have people who come on and, the reality is they don't know what they don't know yet. Right. So when you say, I have small kids. Okay, well, let me tell you how that worked out. Because things come up. And let's say it's COVID, and guess what? Your kids are going to take 1.5 years off of school and they're going to be homeschooling. So those are
definitely all franchisees have been, and business owners in general, right? Have been very challenged by COVID. It's I would say it's unusual, but here we are in what I jokingly call season 3 of the pandemic. And, it's not new anymore, right? We all have to be evaluating this. And I think that franchisee candidates are evaluating it, we've seen so many candidates who are picking franchising because they are burnt out of corporate America. And, they are very open to doing and working hard. They're not people who are just looking for something easy, right? They're looking to put their whole life savings in. They're looking to take out loans. They're looking to mortgage their house.
Big decisions.
These are not people who are necessarily looking for an easy way out, but they know that they're no longer interested frequently in corporate America.
So, Laura, as a franchise attorney, what are some of the big red flags that you have to review with some of these folks that are looking to get into franchising? What are some of the things that you talk to them about?
That's a great question. For some clients, I like to tailor it to what they are looking for, right? There's, we could say, okay, we think that the profitability is not there. We can look at that. We can look at, for example, that they're not going to get territory protection. Those kind of things can be red flags in any system. But I think it's really important also for what we were just talking about to think about, are there red flags that are really custom to the potential franchise buyer? Is this something where, that's going to be a problem from what you just told me, because it's not always the case that what's a problem to one person is a problem to another person.
Sure. Or even a spouse.
Or even a spouse. I do hear, and I do have a lot of the time on my calls or my meetings, I push them to bring their spouse, actually. If it's only one of them who calls me, I'm like, please, if you can, have the spouse on, because otherwise you're going to be trying to explain what I explained to you, and hopefully you get it. I really do hope that you get it after we talk.
Right.
But, if they have follow-on questions, it's much simpler when we're all sitting together to just answer those really quickly, so that way they have that peace of mind, because, usually if one spouse isn't interested in the opportunity or they think it's too risky, that's gonna shut it down.
Sure.
They're not gonna make the investment.
I think the one important thing I want to make sure that we talk about, and just briefly, because I want to do another show with you to talk about the details, but the one document I would say is probably the most important, and I assume that you go through that very, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, with great care, let's say.
Thoroughly.
Yes, thoroughly. There you go. That's the word I was missing. Is the FDD, the franchise disclosure document. Is that probably the number one thing that you
that's our number one review item. Because usually clients, what happens in our process is that clients have already done a lot of their review work, like Jerry was explaining earlier in the show, right? They've already gotten to that point. And so when they come to us, they're really there to make sure that what they think they know is actually within the document. Right?
Sure.
A lot of our conversations are me saying, okay, this is what this says. Is this what you heard? Is this what you think you are getting?
Yes, the legalese of the document, right?
Right. I had one actually very recently. I will not name names, just last week. It's a very expensive concept, okay? It is a concept where to do one location, okay? Not buying any real estate, okay? At least minimum $4 million projected buy-in, okay? So it's probably one of the most expensive concepts I've ever reviewed. More often than not, I'm reviewing concepts where it costs maybe $500,000
right
to do it, okay? So don't think that I'm doing these crazy concepts all the time. However, okay, so you would think, man, everything in this FDD, is going to be immaculate, right?
Sure.
Because you are asking for such a high level of investment that, they need to bring their A game. No, this document was a mess, frankly.
Wow.
And it was a really meaningful conversation with a client who was thinking about making this investment, and everybody feels like they're making a big investment. Whatever your purchase price is, you feel like you're stretching usually.
It's all relative.
And, they were kind of taken aback that they were not being taken as seriously as they were taking the concept, that these people couldn't even put together a document or have it put together, right? Because I write these as well as I review them. And so I know how this could have been, pretty easily put together transparently. And, it's frustrating to have to tell a client that, because they're really excited by the time they come to me. By the time they come to me, they are so sold.
They're bought in. Yeah.
Right.
Hook, line, and sinker.
Right. But it is important, because if you think about, what Jerry was saying about the lifetime commitment of how much they're really going to spend, right? Yeah. Whether that's in the initial build out, if it's a retail concept, or it's just in paying royalties, over the years, whatever it is. Okay. There's a lot of money that's changing hands here, and that they're going to make money, hopefully.
Absolutely.
Likely. But if they're not budgeting to spend, maybe $2,000 or $3,000 on an attorney, I think it's almost a red flag to say, okay, are you really taking this seriously?
Yeah, a $4 million concept for a small $2,000-$3,000 investment.
Right, or even if it's 500 or $1 million. It's really challenging to feel like, are you taking yourself seriously? Are you taking your savings seriously? Would you spend money on, most people who have investments, for example, even if they're just, their own savings, right? You're paying some kind of advisor, either for like a plan every year, or you're paying for, a percentage of whatever your invested assets are.
Yeah.
And so you are paying for that. And so
Yeah.
if you're not paying for it for this, it's almost kind of troubling. I worry about those people. I'm like,
Yeah.
did you really know what you were getting into?
Well, you really provide almost like an insurance policy, right?
Mhm.
Because
Right.
I know.
We want to tell them everything that could come up. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. We talk about, for example, I make a joke. I'm like, well, we're not even at day one yet, but we're going to talk about what happens at renewal in 10 years.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Because you need to know that before you've invested 500,000 or 4 million or whatever
Whatever it
into
is.
this. Right.
Yeah. Laura, I am so glad that we had you on the show today. And I know that you're going to be a recurring guest for us now. And I know that we've got a lot of topics that we can cover with you. So again, for those, I see you, Freddie. So for those of you listening, please keep in mind that Laura has a wealth of information. So if you have questions, this is a great forum to get some of those questions out, whether you go online, whether you use the call-in number. And again, she'll be on again here in the future. So watch our website to see when that next date is. Fred, go ahead, please.
All right. So welcome to the beginnings of year 5. I seem to remember we had somebody from Fran Law on in our first year or two. Do you know them?
That may be. Yeah, I have heard. So I actually practiced with my father, who's Michael Liss, and he's been a franchise attorney for his whole career as well. And so, yeah, we are very fortunate to have been on the show. And, it's great that you guys are bringing so much educational material to your listeners.
Now for the question. Obviously, from what you and Chris have been talking about, you've gone through a whole lot of FDDs. When you're doing that, how many of your clients fall asleep?
None, because I make it very interactive. So my process is not something where I just sit there and talk at you, right? I say, okay, this is who they said is their management people. And I say, who did you meet? How were they? Did they, I will ask the client to really tell me. And so it is a lot more interactive. I will ask them and we will talk in great depth, for example, about, okay, this is what it says the estimated initial investment is. How are you planning to pay for this? We'll get in and talk about their financing options. I had one, short story, maybe a month or so ago, that was looking at doing a hair removal franchise. Not a super expensive concept, fine. But, she asked me to review her loan documents too. And I was like, okay, sure. Yeah, I'll look at them. So we had that as well as the FDD to go through. And, for anybody who knows about how much, an SBA loan might charge you right now in terms of an interest rate, you are about to fall out of your chair. Okay. This was being proposed to her to be financed at like 13%. Right.
Wow, we're back in the 80s.
Well, and I was like, yeah, well, it makes sense why they're really pressuring you to sign this now, because they really want you, they basically are treating you like a sucker, So it's a very interactive conversation. People do not fall asleep. No, that's not an issue in my meetings.
I still say the FDD is the greatest cure for insomnia known to mankind.
And that's why you shouldn't go it alone, right? Don't go it alone.
That's right. Thank you, Kristen.
Well, Laura, how would people reach out and find you should they have a need for a franchise attorney right now before they sign that big old document and write the check?
Absolutely. So our website is franlaw.com. We actually have a trademark for it. And you can reach me at Laura, Laura, at franlaw.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I can't wait to get you back on the show to talk about more what people might think is boring, but franchise law is not boring at all.
No, thanks, you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much, Laura. And we'd like to thank all of you for joining us on the show today, and thank our special guest, Nancy Friedman with the Telephone Doctor. Also, thank you to Laura Liss of Fran Law, our franchise attorney today. And please be sure to like, share, comment on this episode. And as always, thank you to Karen Kimsey Sword, Ray Pillar, David Kajanik, and Jerry Akers, our $1 Million mentors, for their insight and wisdom. I am Kristen Shelmetzi. I am your 5th $1 Million mentor. And together we are your resource for franchising success. This has been Pillars of Franchising, and the dream starts here.
up. Fill it up. Fill